I'm 18, and for the first time in my life, I live completely on my own. It is not some big city apartment with neon lights or noisy neighbors either. It's a small unit on the edge of a quiet town, about 8 miles from the nearest grocery store. That distance always made me feel both safe and isolated. Nobody really had a reason to come out here unless they lived nearby. And up until that night, I thought food delivery apps like Uber Eats were just one of those conveniences that made living so far away from town easier. It was a Friday evening in late fall, the kind of night where the air had that early chill of winter and the trees were bare, scratching their limbs against the wind. My boyfriend was supposed to visit me that weekend. He goes to college about 2 hours away, so we only ever get to see each other on Saturdays and Sundays. I always tried to make the place look nice before he came, partly because I knew he noticed, and partly because it gave me something to do when the loneliness got heavy. So I spent almost 2 hours cleaning that evening. By the time I finished, my hands smelled like bleach and lemon-scented Windex, my back ached, and my stomach was rumbling. I had cleaned every dish, scrubbed every counter, and vacuumed every carpet. The thought of messing up the kitchen again just to cook dinner felt exhausting. I decided to order food instead. I opened the app, scrolled through the usual places, and finally picked a burger joint I liked. I tapped the option for leave at the door contactless delivery. I don't know if it's paranoia or just being cautious, but I hate interacting with strangers at night when I'm alone. My instructions were clear. Drop it at the door, no knocking. No talking, easy. The app said my driver's name was Jason, and he was in a white Honda Fit Sport, nothing unusual. I put my phone down and turned on the TV, flipping to a random sitcom rerun just to fill the silence. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with the familiar notification, "Your order has been delivered." Excited and starving, I jumped up from the couch and opened the front door. But when I looked down, there was nothing. No bag, no receipt, nothing. At first I thought maybe he left it at the wrong apartment. There are 6 units in my building, all lined up in a row, so sometimes packages get mixed up. But when I peeked down the row, none of the doors had food waiting outside either. Confused, I was about to send the driver a message when I heard a knock at my door. It wasn't the delivery guy. It was my next-door neighbor, a man in his 40s who I'd only spoken to in passing a few times. He was holding my bag of food in one hand and wearing a look that I can only describe as concerned. "Hey," he said, "this was supposed to be yours, right?" The delivery guy. He was standing at your window, like, actually leaning and looking inside. I grabbed the food from him. Didn't feel right. I remember freezing, my stomach twisting with a sudden unease that had nothing to do with hunger. I thanked him quickly, muttered something awkward, and took the bag. The smell of fries should have made me happy, but my appetite faded a little as I closed the door. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe the driver was just lost or confused. Maybe he thought he had the wrong door and was checking the numbers. That explanation made me feel better. I turned the TV back on, ate my food, and told myself it was over. By midnight, I was in bed. My dog, a tiny 5-pound Yorkie who thinks he's much scarier than he is, was curled up at the foot of the bed. I FaceTimed my boyfriend for a bit, told him about the weird delivery mix-up, and then eventually drifted off. But sleep didn't last. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to my dog growling. Not the playful kind of growl he makes when he wants attention. This was low, steady, almost vibrating. His ears were up and his gaze was fixed at the window. I whispered his name, but he didn't look at me. He was locked on the back of the apartment toward my bedroom window. I sat up and listened. At first there was nothing, just the faint hum of my heater. Then I heard a scrape, like fingertips brushing against the glass. My chest went tight. My window doesn't even lock properly. The latch broke months ago, and I kept putting off fixing it. All I could think about was how easy it would be for someone to lift it open. My dog barked suddenly, high-pitched and frantic, making me flinch. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. I whispered to the dispatcher, trying not to make noise. "Someone's outside my window. I live alone and my window doesn't lock. Please send someone." The woman's voice was calm but firm. She told me to leave the room, get to the safest place I could, and stay on the line until officers arrived. I crept out of the bedroom, clutching my phone in one hand and grabbing a kitchen knife with the other. My dog followed, still growling under his breath. I stood in the kitchen, peeking through the blinds, praying for the sound of sirens. That's when I saw it. Parked across the street, just past the field where people sometimes let their dogs run, was a white Honda Fit, the same one my delivery driver had been driving. And it wasn't moving. The headlights were off, but I knew exactly whose car it was. My blood ran cold. I whispered to the dispatcher, "It's him. The delivery driver. His car is outside. He's here." Minutes felt like hours. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind against the siding made me jump. I kept imagining footsteps behind me, a shadow moving past the window, the soft lift of the broken latch in my bedroom. Finally, I saw flashing blue and red lights bounce against the walls of my apartment. Relief crashed over me so hard I almost dropped the phone. 2 officers knocked on my door, and I let them in with shaking hands. One stayed with me, asking questions, while the other went around back with a flashlight. A 3rd officer checked the white car parked across the street. When they came back inside, their faces were grim. The officer who searched my backyard said there were footprints in the mud, right up against my bedroom window. Clear prints, size 11 or 12. And they weren't mine. The car, they confirmed, was registered to Jason, the Uber driver who had delivered my food. But the car was empty, no sign of him inside. I started crying. I couldn't help it. The reality hit me all at once. He had been outside my bedroom, maybe even seconds away from coming in, while I was hiding in the dark with a kitchen knife and a 5-pound dog for protection. My neighbor came outside when he saw the police cars. He told the officers about earlier how he'd caught Jason peering through my windows before. I realized then just how lucky I was that my neighbor had been around at all. The cops stayed for a while, taking statements, checking the area. Eventually, when things seemed calm, they said they'd patrol nearby for the night and left me with instructions to lock up tight and call again if anything happened. I tried to convince myself it was over. I even managed to crawl back into bed around 2 a.m., though I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me tense. My dog didn't stop pacing for almost an hour. Then, at around 2:45, there was pounding on my front door. I froze, but it wasn't him. It was the police again. The female officer I'd spoken to earlier stood at the door, her face lit by the red and blue glow behind her. She told me they had stayed nearby, parked out of sight in case Jason decided to come back. And he had. They caught him walking up the steps to my apartment, slowly, quietly, like he was trying not to be noticed. They arrested him right there, just a few feet away from where I was standing inside. I don't think I've ever felt fear like I did in that moment, not when I saw his car, not even when I heard the footsteps at my window. The idea that he had come back, that he was willing to try again even with police around, made my skin crawl. The officer told me I was safe now, that he was in custody and wouldn't be bothering me anymore. I thanked her, but I couldn't stop shaking. That night changed something in me. I still live in the same apartment, but I don't order food delivery anymore. I can't. Every time I think about it, I remember the sound of my dog growling at the window, the muddy footprints leading right to where I slept, and the sight of that white car sitting silently in the dark, waiting. I keep asking myself, what if my neighbor hadn't been there? What if the cops hadn't decided to stay hidden? What if Jason had managed to lift my window just a little higher? I don't think I'd be here to tell this story. Back in late 2019, right before everything with the pandemic shut the world down, I was working as a delivery driver for a local service in my town. I wasn't making much money, so when deliveries slowed at night, I started doing rideshare on the side. It seemed simple enough: pick people up, drop them off, get paid, repeat. What nobody tells you, though, is that driving strangers around at night is a gamble. You meet every type of person: loud drunks, couples who won't stop fighting, people who spill their life story into the back seat like it's some confessional booth. At first, I thought that was the worst of it. I thought the awkwardness and occasional vomit cleanup were as bad as it could get. But then came a night in December that I'll never forget. Because to this day, I still don't know if what I experienced was real, or if I drove a passenger that shouldn't have existed at all. It was a Saturday night just after 1 a.m. I had been driving for about 5 hours, and my plan was to take one last ride before calling it quits. That's when I got a ping for a pickup in front of a 24-hour laundromat on the east side of town. The name on the ride said Aaron, seemed normal enough. I pulled into the lot a few minutes later and saw someone standing out front. The place was empty except for this one guy. He was tall, thin, dressed in dark clothes with a beanie pulled low. He didn't wave or signal when I pulled up, just slowly walked toward my car and got in the back seat without a word. "Hey, Aaron," I asked. He nodded. His movements were stiff, mechanical almost, like every small motion was something he had to think about first. He confirmed the destination when I asked. It was an address about 20 minutes away on the outskirts of town. The ride started and silence settled in almost immediately. That wasn't unusual. Some passengers don't want to talk. But there was something about his silence that wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, like the whole car was holding its breath. I glanced in the mirror after a few minutes, expecting him to be on his phone or maybe looking out the window. He wasn't. He was sitting upright, head angled just slightly forward, eyes fixed dead ahead. Not out the side, not drifting around, just locked in one direction, as if he was staring straight through me. To break the tension, I asked how his night was going. His response came after a long pause. "It doesn't matter." His voice was flat, cold, like he was reciting words without attaching emotion to them. The route took us farther and farther out of town, away from streetlights and neighborhoods, into areas I didn't recognize. My stomach knotted tighter with every mile. When we were about 5 minutes from the address, he suddenly leaned forward just a little and said, "Turn here." His finger pointed to a narrow dirt road I would have missed if he hadn't spoken up. I hesitated. "That's not the route listed." "Turn," he repeated, a little firmer. Against my better judgment, I did. The dirt road wound deep into a wooded area, branches hanging low and scraping against the car as we drove. My headlights barely cut through the darkness. After a few minutes, a house appeared, a rundown place with sagging walls, boarded windows, and a porch that looked like it might collapse under its own weight. There were no cars outside. No lights on inside. "Pull in," he said. I did, though every nerve in my body was screaming at me to keep driving. I parked at the edge of the overgrown yard. He sat still for a moment, staring at the house like it was something sacred or cursed, I couldn't tell which. Then he said, "Wait here," and climbed out. He didn't head for the front door. He walked slowly around the side of the house, disappearing into the shadows. I sat frozen, engine still running, eyes flicking between the house and my rearview mirror. A minute passed, then another. The silence outside was suffocating. No crickets, no wind, just the low hum of my engine. Finally, I decided enough was enough. I ended the ride in the app, put the car in reverse, and started backing out of the yard. That's when movement caught my eye. He was coming back. But this time, he wasn't walking slow. He was striding toward the car, fast, almost too fast, like he'd been waiting for me to move. I panicked and froze instead of flooring it. He yanked the back door open, slid in, and said, "Take me somewhere else." My throat went dry. "You'll have to put it in the app." His eyes met mine in the mirror, and for the first time that night I saw emotion in them. Not anger exactly. Not happiness, something darker. "Just drive," he said. I didn't argue. I pulled out of the yard and back onto the dirt road. My hands shook on the wheel as I asked, "Where do you need to go?" He leaned back in the seat, silent for a long moment, then said, "Back where you picked me up." The ride back was worse than the first. The entire time I could feel him staring at me, not blinking, not shifting, just staring. The pressure of it made my skin crawl. I tried to break the silence again, asked if he was all right. He leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Not yet." I drove faster after that, my only goal to get him out of my car. When we pulled back into the laundromat lot, I exhaled, already reaching to end the ride and lock the doors. But before I could, he leaned forward one last time and asked, "Do you ever wonder how you're going to die?" My hands froze on the wheel. I gave a nervous laugh. "Not really." He didn't laugh. He just stared, then he whispered, "I think about it all the time." He opened the door and stepped halfway out. But before leaving, he leaned back in, his face pale and expressionless under the dim yellow light. His voice was low, deliberate. "You picked the wrong guy up tonight." Then he shut the door and walked off into the night. I sat there trembling for what felt like an eternity before finally driving away. When I got home, I checked the app to make sure the trip had gone through. But when I opened the details, my blood ran cold. There was no rider name, no trip history, no record that the ride had ever happened at all. I tried contacting support, but they told me there was nothing in their system, like the entire ride had never existed. They gave me some generic explanation about possible glitches or cancellations, but I know what I experienced. I know he was real. And even now, years later, whenever I get into my car alone at night, I can still hear his voice in the back of my head. You picked the wrong guy up tonight.